Hi, I'm Katie, and you're listening to Shut Up and Chat with Millie Manders.
Hello and welcome back to Shut Up and Chat. Today I am here with an amazing lady called Katie Tavini, and Katie did the mastering for our second album. And I'm really excited to talk to Katie today because I don't actually know much about mastering, and I don't know if you guys listening do. But Katie, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. If you wouldn't mind, can you just give us a little a walk through your career, like how you got into the music industry, what you do today, and sort of the journey that you've been on?
Yeah, so do you want the long version or the short version?
I mean, that is up to you. You can go for the long version because I love hearing the history of somebody and how they got into the music industry. So go
Okay.
for it.
So when I was in uni, I did just a general music degree, and there was a really small recording module on it, and I absolutely loved it because it was not techie at all. I'm not a techie person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really like using the studio as a creative tool as opposed to like, oh, this is gain staging, blah, 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 which is all I talk about now in my job. But back then I really didn't care. I just wanted to be creative. And I was just basically there all the time. And one of my tutors was like, hey, you're here all the time. I was like, well, yeah, I'm never gonna have access to anything like this once I finish.
Right.
And he was like, well, I've been offered a job in a studio, but obviously I can't take it because I work here. Do you want it? I was like,
What? That's so cool.
yeah, okay. And I thought I'd just be making tea and, that kind of stuff for a bit. But I was engineering for a producer called Bill Leader, and he has been making folk music since like the 50s, I think. Like by the time I started working with him, he was 80 and still producing. Wow. So he'd had this like incredible history, and obviously seeing every technology as it happened, which
Right.
was just amazing. And John Ellis, who's a keys player, who is probably the most secret genius I've ever met in terms of like just ability to pick up any instrument and be an absolute wizard on it and be really like creative, but also like tasteful and empathetic. And so yeah, working with those two was like, I didn't realize at the time what a kind of unicorn situation that is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be still in university and getting a job in what sounds like an incredibly high-end professional situation.
I mean, it was actually quite DIY, but like it just, I don't know, just working with people who were so passionate that they didn't really care about anything other than making something really good.
Right.
And that was just so inspiring. That was like, I couldn't have asked for a better introduction to music.
Yeah.
And then kind of, I mean, it was a really long road into mastering. Like, I didn't know what mastering was the first time I ever mastered something, but I did, I engineered and I did a little bit of production for a couple of people.
So I just ask because a lot of people won't really understand the difference. And when somebody hears engineering, a lot of people think of live music rather than engineering. So can you just explain the difference between what engineering is and production?
Yeah. So in a studio, you normally have an engineer and a producer, or sometimes they're the same person. Basically, the engineer is the person that will put up the microphones to record each instrument, and the producer is the person who will say like what microphones to use.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of like operating logic, like bringing up plugins that the producer might want to try, or like saving different versions of mixers to listen to. Lots of tidying cables, making sure people don't trip up. That's a really big thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being there and kind of making sure that the producer has everything that they need to do their job. And then the producer is the person that's making all the decisions about the sound and the direction of the sound. So like Oh, you know, I mean, they might not specify which microphone to use. They might specify a sound that they want instead, and then it's the engineer's job to go, okay, I think we'll try these two microphones and see which you prefer. But the producer's the person kind of steering the ship. They're kind of directing everything. Yeah, maybe direct, like if you think about it in film terms, maybe it's the equivalent of a director or something.
Nice.
I don't know, because I don't know what a film director does. Analogies.
Maybe I should also interview somebody in the film industry so we can clear that up.
Maybe. So yeah, that's the kind of difference between production and engineering. And then in the kind of record making process as well, you'll typically have a mix engineer who might be the producer, or they might be the recording engineer, or they might be someone completely different. And then you'll have a mastering engineer who's not normally been, you know, involved in any of the, you know, the process so far.
Nice. Thank you.
That's all right.
Sorry for interrupting your history flow there, but
no, it's all good.
You find it really difficult. Like, so as a musician who is very DIY, it's only really at this point in my career where I'm working with separate producers and mixing engineers and mastering and that kind of thing. But a lot of younger people at the beginning of their career won't necessarily know all of the difference, because it's usually the one person in the studio that will do all of it for them.
Yes, and that was me when I was starting out working with kind of punk and rock bands from Manchester, like doing everything. But the thing is, doing everything is really hard. And so yeah, I like, you know, when you know that you're bad at something and you just kind of accept it.
I mean, yes, yeah, there's lots of things I've accepted that I'm terrible at.
I was always really shit at mixing, and no matter how hard I practiced, like I loved engineering in the studio, like, you know, being in the room with people, working with a producer, that was like amazing for me. But like you said, kind of when you're starting off, especially if you're DIY, especially if you're making heavy music, because there's not as much money in heavy music.
Yep.
It is normally the same person doing everything. And you know, as a person kind of engineering, you are expected to mix at the very start of your career. And I was so bad at it. Like, there's too many choices. There's like, you know, every band member wants their instrument turning up, no shade.
Yeah. Yeah. Like ones, same as a rehearsal. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it just didn't vibe with me. And like sitting with a song for so long, like I've got a short attention span. I want to be on to the next thing. And it wasn't until I kind of, you know, mastered something for the first time that I was like, oh, okay. But the reason why I started learning how to master is because I knew I was shit at mixing. And I asked in an online forum, like, what do you do? What happens if you're bad? Like, how do you improve? And YouTube and tutorials and all of, you know, those resources weren't around then, because I'm quite old. And
same.
Yeah, like it wasn't a thing. Like that now there's a lot of very visible people doing these jobs, and I didn't know that these were jobs when I started out, because I couldn't see anyone doing them and I didn't know anyone in the music industry. So sorry, this is like really messy.
Oh no, this is honestly, this is perfect, because it's giving us an insight into like what all of those different job roles are, and actually that you can be a brilliant person in one format of like all of these job roles by finding your way through the things that aren't necessarily right for you in the industry. And I think actually that's really relevant to loads of people in the music industry. You know, having tried to do some production and things myself in my early days at college and things, the first thing I found out is that I hate zeros and ones. I hate them with a grand passion. And I'm much better off behind a microphone than I am a desk. And so I let other people deal with the tech side of things, because you can tell me about wavelengths and all the numericals that you like. I'm just going to sit there and nod and smile politely, you know. And I think it's just the same for everybody. So it's really cool to hear you just being like, do you know what, that wasn't good for me, so this is what I did.
I just think like there's so many ways you can exist in music, and I definitely think it's worth having a go at everything to find out what you do and don't like, but I don't think you need to be good at everything to have a career in music. And I don't think, like, I don't know, I was probably a really average recording engineer.
Right.
Like, you know, I was pretty organized and efficient and stuff, but like, you know, I probably wasn't amazing at it. Had I stuck with it, you know, maybe, but I think it's a case of have a go at stuff until you find the thing that really like resonates with you and like clicks in your brain. But for a long time I was like trying to pretend but like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely fine recording and mixing. This is totally fine. Whereas actually I was really hating it, but I felt like I had to pretend to be enjoying the mixing bit so that I got to do the recording and production bit.
Right.
Whereas actually saying, you know what, I'm bad at this was quite freeing. But I went on an online forum and said, like, how do you get better at mixing? And someone said, if you want to improve at mixing, learn how to master. And I don't know if that was good advice or not, but I kind of started trying to teach myself mastering with the really limited information that I knew, and had been kind of asking people and like, so what is it? And just kind of very trial and error. And then one day someone asked me to master something for them.
Okay. And that's where it all began. And that was like, okay,
yeah,
this is where I want to be, basically. Okay, so that has brought us on to one of the biggest questions of today, really, because as somebody who is a mastering engineer by trade, what is mastering?
That is such a massive question. So I think every mastering engineer will have a different kind of definition and feeling about what mastering is. The beauty of the music industry is that you can make something whatever you want it to be. For me, mastering is basically helping an artist release their music. That's mastering in a nutshell. Before we get to mastering, the mixing, the bit that I really hate. Let's talk about your record. So Claire mixed it, did an amazing job. And what she did was basically like, in the studio, you'll have recorded the bass, the guitars, the drums, the vocals. And she will have blended all those instruments together to make sure that you can hear everything, everything's sitting really nicely, it's sounding like balanced, and there's no kind of, you know, the bass isn't overpowering the kick drum or anything. Like you're kind of you're able to hear everything.
What I like to call being able to walk around the instruments when you're
yes, exactly. Like
literally walk around and listen to each person individually. That's when it's a good mix for me.
Yeah, totally. So mastering is basically being given those mixes as a stereo file, and then I see my job in 3 parts. So number 1, which I think is the most important part, is a quality check, and that's just basically making sure that the mix functions as it should.
Okay.
So sometimes, especially if you're mixing and producing, you can be sat with a track for a long time. There might be talking at the end of a vocal take that you meant to remove one day and then you've just gotten used to it and now you can't hear it at all. I'm going to pick up on that immediately. Or, you know, can I hear the bass? Like, can I really hear the bass? That's kind of a big thing, is like, is the low end sitting correctly so I can hear it? Is the very tail, like the reverb tail of the very last note, is that fully, you know, is it fully there, or is it being cut off slightly? If someone's worked to a grid and they've not kind of extended forward a little bit. Like they've started at beat 1 on bar 1. Is that first beat cut off a little bit?
Okay.
The little things like these I'm looking out for.
Mm-hmm.
Also looking out for any clipping, but basically just making sure that the mix functions as it should. Like, is is there a vocal in your instrumental track? That's a really common one.
Right, okay.
There'll just be like a tiny little backing vocal in your instrumental track, but you need the instrumentals for sync, so they're important. So it's just kind of my job to catch these things before they get released, flag them, and then, it's all chill. So the quality check's super important. Second part of mastering is the audio processing, which is the bit that's super, super hyped up online. I'm really not very technical, so I kind of approach this from quite a holistic vibe. I really, when I'm kind of processing audio and mastering, try and think like, what is the point of this song? Like, what is it trying to achieve? Like, what is this band's vision?
So you become almost from like an emotive stance on each song. So you sit yourself within the message and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. Really
cool. I'll be making tiny little tweaks with like an equalizer. I'll be using a limiter to get things to a good volume. I'll be maybe using a compressor to move the music in a different way, but we're talking like tiny little tweaks, tiny little tweaks. Together, they make up a thing, which is very subtle. Individually, you may struggle to hear those tweaks, but they all kind of make sense at the end, hopefully. Sometimes not. Sometimes I go down a direction which I think is the right direction at the start, and then I'll have a listen at the end of the day and think, actually, that's not it, that's not the one. And then you kind of have to sort of rethink the plan of things. But the goal generally with the audio processing part of mastering is, when you've got an album, really working on the flow of things, making sure that the emotion of each song is there and is like powerful and is kind of, I guess it's getting things to sound finished. I've been a music fan my entire life. I think if you want to do mastering as a job, you have to listen to so many records. And yeah, there's just something about mastering where it's like, okay, I know where this has to be. And it's really weird because you can't teach that. And you've got all of these tools. Which tools which tools do I use?
I guess that kind of aligns with, like, you can be a musician, right? You can be a really well-trained musician, know exactly how everything works, be theoretically brilliant, and still have no feeling in the way that you play. Whereas you can have somebody that taught themselves for 6 months, and every time they play a note, it hits you in the chest. So it sounds like you're kind of giving me the difference between those two things. Like, you can have somebody that's fantastic at making something sound crystalline, Radio 1 ready, but it doesn't necessarily have any of the vibe and the emotion that the artists were trying to create in the first place, right?
I mean, there are engineers who are really like up on their tech, and they are doing amazing masters, and I would listen and say, yeah, that's like a really emotional master and they're nailing it. I'm just not someone who, I guess, approaches it. Like, I think you can still get a really emotive master being kind of tech forward.
Okay.
I just don't find that things, like, it takes me longer if I think about the technology. The reason why, like, I used to master just all on plugins in the computer, but the reason why I like having analog equipment is because I feel like if I use my hands, I can get to a point quicker.
Okay.
Like I don't look at the dials on them. I just listen to what they're doing and how does it make me feel. I guess it's just a different way of working, really. Whereas someone who's really techie might be like, oh, I know like this feeling needs to happen. I know exactly what to do and be able to like dial it in that way. Whereas I'm kind of more, let's see what happens if I do this. Like, how does that make me feel? I don't know. It feels like maybe a little backwards way of doing it. But
it's massively interesting to me. And it sounds like I would like to sit behind you and watch you work one day and just be like, oh, well, this is incredibly interesting. You know?
You're totally welcome to anytime.
When I'm up your neck of the woods, I'm calling in.
Absolutely. Put the kettle on.
Please. That is actually a really interesting understanding of how various people can work, because again, like the common idea for me, my misconception is that mastering is something that's very technical, very like computery, and therefore you have to do lots of computery techie things in order to get this crystalline sound. But you've just said, you know, there's various different ways of working within that. So I find that incredibly interesting, that there's so many various ways of how people will approach this sort of thing. And of course, you know, logically, of course, there's various ways somebody's going to approach their things. There's various ways people hold a spoon, let alone, you know, do mastering. So thank you.
Next question. How do you hold your spoon?
Yeah, how do you hold your spoon? So you got into mastering on sort of an off-the-cuff basis, I guess. And was it that first project that gave you the passion and drive to then deliver that for lots of other people?
I really enjoyed that project. I'm not gonna lie, it was terrifying. And I'd said to the producer, like, if this is shit, please don't use it because it's gonna make us both look bad.
Right.
But you know, he took it to the band, they really liked it. I ended up with more work and thought, wow, I've really got to learn how to do this. I still work with that producer today.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very dear to me. He's amazing. He's called James Routh. He's a brilliant producer. And yeah.
I know James, Sonic Boom 6.
Well, actually, that's where I found you.
Oh,
so awkward. I've been listening to your music since 2015.
No way.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like I was researching just for people that have worked with like punk and like metal, and I specifically wanted to work with a woman because of some of the values I have in the music industry anyway, but also because I feel like some of the subject matters that I talk about in my lyrics require that level of understanding, and to be able to sit, as you say, sit within those emotions and create that. So I had no idea. That's so awesome.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think it was an EP or something you released in like 2015. And did you support Sonic Boom 6 on the tour or something? Am I imagining that?
No, we didn't.
You're not toured
on a tour, but we've been on lots of different lineups.
Yeah,
because you know we're a similar ilk in terms of the section of the music industry that we perform in. So the last one we did was only a few weeks ago, I think February, maybe a bit later than that, it might have been March, but that was in Leeds at the Fistful of Ska. So yeah, we're regularly on the circuit together for sure. And I think I've known James Routh since probably 2014, I would say. Maybe a bit earlier than that, might even be sort of, yeah. But I'd say around 2014, 2015, I've known James since then. So yeah, we used to go to the cinema and take secret take tins in, watch films and get drunk on cider. So
I love that.
Actually, here you go. Here's a story. Podcasters, you're going to love this. The first time I met James Routh, it was actually 2013. I'd gone to review an album for the Punk Archive at a little pub in Camden. And James had lost everybody and didn't have anywhere to stay. And I was like, oh, I will just stay back at my place. That's fine. I puked on his shoes. The first time I ever met James Routh, I puked on his shoes on the tube. on the way to let him crash at my pad because he'd lost everybody.
You know what? The first time I met James Routh in real life, I puked, not on his shoes, but I did. Yeah.
He's clearly got that effect.
Yeah.
You know?
My friend Heather had to like carry me into a taxi and take me away. Yeah. But well, there you go, James, if you're listening.
Can you stop making everybody puke, please?
Yeah. So yeah, fun times. Fun times at the Sonic Boom 6 puke fest.
I think that's great though. You know, when you find people that you can work with who are good for you in the industry, it's always good to stick with those people and build your outward community from there. And actually we could go either way here. So I'd like to talk about your community in music, and I think that segues nicely into that. So you mentioned when we were chatting about the podcast that you run a group for women, non-binary, transgender people, to get them into production engineering. And it's called 2% Rising. Is that?
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a Facebook group that myself and my dear friend Jenny, aka the producer called Rooks, started. I think we actually started it like the week before the pandemic. And it's basically what we were aiming for was a space where we could ask questions and not get like one word answers or have people talk to us like we're thick or, you know, that it's bad that we don't know this stuff. Like we just wanted somewhere that we could go, oh, does anyone know how to do this? Yeah, cool. Amazing. And it's a safe space where no one looks down at anyone for not, you know, already knowing all of these things, because we'd both found that in spaces which are kind of open, they are predominantly cis-het white men, and it's not always a nice interaction. And so we kind of wanted to make somewhere that's like, you know, on a selfish level where we could learn from people. It ended up kind of really escalating over the pandemic. So it started out kind of being for people who are not cis men, so women, non-binary, transgender, expansive people who want to produce or engineer or are producing and engineering. And then it's kind of grown to include songwriters, musicians, and yeah, things really kind of escalated in the pandemic because obviously no one was going anywhere. Loads of people had free time, and lots of people started learning how to produce, and it was amazing. And so we've done quite a lot of meetups, we've done skill shares, we've done like listening parties so people can get feedback on their songs in a really safe space.
That's incredible.
It's just a really nice community, and I'm really proud of kind of, you know, it's not what Jenny and I have built, it's what the community's built.
Sure.
And it's really, yeah, it's really amazing because when, like, before I started doing mastering full time, my now manager, Brendan Harding, phoned me and he was like, I've got this mad idea. Do you want to host a workshop at Red Bull Studios each month?
Amazing.
And I was based in Manchester at the time, and he was the head engineer at Red Bull Studios in London. And it was for women, non-binary, transgender, expansive people, and it was a production workshop, a DJ workshop, and an engineering workshop. And he basically asked me to host the engineering workshop. And I met some of my best friends through doing that. But being in the room with people and seeing the same faces each month and kind of feeling like we were all like on this journey together, like it wasn't always the same people. Sometimes people came once and then didn't come again, and sometimes people came every single time. But it's just really nice kind of all feeling like we were in something and working towards the same thing, and you know, having that actual network. Because I think, so I'm from Manchester, I only lived in London for 11 months because that's all I could handle.
Oh, right, okay.
But like, I do feel it, like if you're outside of London, it's really hard to meet people in the music industry,
Yeah,
or to see people who are where you want to be, like what you aspire to. Obviously, social media is more of a thing now, but that can also feel really intimidating because you're only seeing like the best bits.
sure. And not only that, but actually, when you're approaching somebody that's like quote unquote bigger than you in the part of the industry that you want to be in, often it's hard to get even a friendly conversation going on social media because they're so busy and they have so many messages coming through that actually the only way that you're going to get to talk to them is if you can see them face to face and introduce yourself and ask them questions that way. So it's really tough. I was very lucky that I was in London for 18 years and did my degree.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I moved there when I was a tender little 17-year-old, and did my sort of my college and then my degree and stuff like that out there. And if I hadn't had that and had that a lot of those networking opportunities, some of what I've been able to do as a musician, I don't think would have happened if I had been here in Norwich or in East Anglia doing that. So I completely get that, for sure.
It's hard, like it is so hard to meet people, but I think it's really important to be in the same room as people if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people also want to know what you're like as a personality, right? And anybody can be charming on a message.
I really struggle.
I'll actually change that to most people can come across as at least pleasant in a message, right? But when you actually meet someone face to face, that's when you know whether or not this person is genuine, is kind, is hardworking, or whatever, right? Because you can't really fake that necessarily, right? And I think that also is a barrier. So if you can only message someone on social media, they don't really know who you are or what you're about or what your reputation is like. So again, yeah, I 100% agree. If you can get to see that person in whatever form that is, in order to present yourself and just be like, I really respect you and I would really value 5 minutes of your time. It's a completely different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, whereas I think like I get quite intimidated by people on social media, but I also, if I really like someone's work, I'm like, why would they reply to me? Do you know what I mean? Like, and also I just think social media is so bad for your mental health. Like, whereas going to an event and being in a place that's like intentional and you know, like there's a purpose to everyone being there. It's just so much easier to, you know, go and say, oh, I like your music, like, you know, no one's surprised by that. That's not going to make anyone feel uncomfortable. But it's like it's rare. Those opportunities are so rare. Like this event that I used to do with Red Bull, that's not a thing anymore.
Right.
Sadly, but it does mean that my manager is now my manager, so I won.
Yeah, and you ended up creating a different community as a part of that, right? That must have been part of the ideology behind this other community that you then created in 2020.
Well, yeah. So actually, so 2% Rising, which Jenny and I set up in 2020, was kind of we love the sort of in-person thing of the Normal Art Novelty event, but we don't have like the resources to do that. So let's just Facebook group. But then actually, my manager Brendan and I set up a mastering collective in 2022, which was interesting. Like I had the idea for that in like 2018, I think, before I was mastering full time. And then when I started, you know, I quit my job, I started getting busy with mastering. I pitched it and I was like, what if we work with other mastering engineers? Like, what if this is like, you know, like a mastering house, but everyone has their own studios where they want to be, everyone, but we look after each other and we learn together. And I'd met Stephen Kerrison in the pandemic. He asked me to be on his podcast, and we just got on. Like, just got on. It just worked. And he was like, if you ever have like anything that you need help with, like, I know you're busy, like, let me know. And I was like, you could do some work for me. Like, I could pass some work to you. That would be nice. Because he has a very similar ethos to me, as in like the band comes first. Like, this is, he's a music fan. Like, and I also noticed that our work sounds quite similar. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I also met Izzy McPhee in the pandemic.
Who's Izzy McPhee?
So Izzy McPhee is one of the other Weird Jungle Mash players, and I was assigned as her mentor on a Saffron music program, and she wanted to mix, and I don't know anything about mixing, and that's fine. But she brought me this song, and she was like, "I've mastered this. Can you listen to it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I listened to it. I was like, "It's better than I could do, isn't it?" She never mastered anything before, but she had been a DJ for so long that she picked it up instantly. And so, I started working with her and kind of, I guess, guiding her through like being a mastering engineer.
Nice.
And so, so I think 2% Rising has like funneled so much work to Weird Jungle.
Yeah.
And it's like this kind of, I don't know, it feels
big
like
type thing. Like,
it's a nice wholesome corner of what can feel like a really kind of scary, intimidating industry. But to know that everyone like cares about inclusivity and mental health and well-being, like everyone I work with cares, and that's really important to me.
So with this 2% Rising, obviously it's focused around non-cis male members, basically. If there's anybody that's listening that wants to get into the sort of the recording, producing, mixing, mastering kind of thing, is this like an open forum for other people to join this Facebook group and get advice, or is it quite a closed, like, private forum for people that you know, or how does it work?
Yeah, so anyone can join as long as you're not a cis man. It's on Facebook. You do have to request to join, just so that we can kind of keep it as a safe space.
Yeah.
But there's no, there's no sort of, you just have to fill out some questions to make sure you're not spam, and that's it, really. You don't need to kind of have been a certain level of production or anything. Like, you can literally decide, oh, I fancy learning how to produce tomorrow, and then sign up. It's not
and all people need to search for on Facebook, I'm assuming, is 2% Rising.
Yeah, that's it.
Come up as a group. Great, that's awesome. You mentioned mental health a couple of times while we were talking about community and what you've built within that. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I'm saying us like the royal we, I mean anybody that is listening, by the way. I don't have to do birthdays like the Queen or anything. I just realized I've said it a few times now, and I'm like, this is probably going to sound like I either have many people that I talk to in my head, or that I think I'm the Queen. Neither. Maybe the voices, but only late at night.
My birthday was on the same birthday as the Queen's birthday, so it came up in like iPhone calendars as Queen's birthday. And my wonderful friend Thea sent me a screenshot of it saying Katie's birthday and Queen's birthday, and was like, same thing. And I've still got that screenshot. I love it.
Excellent.
Like, little claim to fame.
I love that.
In time.
Yeah. So basically, you are a queen, as we all are.
Of course.
So yeah, I'd really like to hear about, because being a woman in a male-dominated section of the industry is difficult on so many different levels, whether you're starting out or at the top of your game. It's a really hard place to be and to keep. How do you manage your mental health with all of the things that you've got going on? Just, your organization, you're really busy, you've got work coming in all the time, you've probably sidelining some work in order to just keep yourself on top of things. How are you managing all that and your mental health?
Yeah, so it's a process. It's like an ongoing thing. It's not easy. It's really not easy. One of the biggest things is, so I work with a bookings manager, Carla Harding. So I have two managers, Brendan and Carla. Brendan kind of looks after like bigger picture stuff. So if I'm like, oh, I'd like to talk to Millie Manders on her podcast, please, he's like, okay, we'll make that happen.
Nice.
And then Carla manages my diary, so that's the like kind of day to day. So she will book in a date for a project in my diary. She will get a link to the file. She'll tell me how many songs it is. She'll allocate a certain amount of time for each song. We really work together on like structuring my weeks as well. So and again, this is like, everything's made up in the music industry. No one knows, because there's no rule book. So everyone's just making stuff up as they go along and seeing what works for them. I don't know anyone else who works like this, but this is how I work. So I have Mondays for revisions and formats.
Okay.
And then I take bookings for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I have Fridays for revisions and formats again. And just having an entire day for those, instead of having to do like a revision and format, you know, for something at the end of a day, when, you know, some days it's not just the kind of being busy that can be tricky. Sometimes, like you said before, lyrical content, like that can be really hard. You're kind of working with people's emotions and their thoughts and their feelings and the deepest, darkest stuff. And that can be hard. And I really found that, you know, sometimes, especially if an album is like very heavy content lyrically, I can't then go on to do revisions on like maybe a dance banger at the end of the day. I'm just not in the mood for that.
So it's almost like being like, without having to do the therapy for other people, it's almost like being a therapist, because you're constantly being bombarded by what a therapist would listen to, essentially, because we're all outpouring the you know, the most bleeding parts of our hearts go into these songs. And so you're having to sit there and absorb all of that in order to make it listenable and put that emotion back in. So I am likening it to the fact that a therapist then needs to go home and decompress from all of those sessions.
Yeah, and all therapists have therapists apparently, and I have a really good one. But also like it's just taking breaks, like really regular breaks, like going to pat my cat, going for a little walk, stuff like just the stuff that people tell you that when you first start out doing something, you're like, I don't need to do that. And then you get to a place which is like really not okay. And then you're like, oh, and you tell your therapist, and then she's like, well, have you been taking breaks? Have you been looking after yourself? And you go, well, no. And she's like, well, that's why. That's why you feel shitty. I think lifting heavy weights in the gym is like a really big part of my like keeping my mental health on track as well. But I think I definitely think working with other engineers and kind of having like making a support network, like if you're in music and you don't have a support network, go and make one.
Yeah.
Like don't wait for someone else to kind of reach out. Like just go, okay, who in my kind of circle do I really trust? Get together and just make a WhatsApp group and just check in every few days. Like, how's everyone doing? There's some memes, like just kind of talk about the shit stuff, but also talk about the good stuff. And I think that's really helped me, is having a crew of other mastering engineers. We have a WhatsApp group, and it's like, you know, it's everything from our pets to mental health to like general health and kind of all aspects of life, really. But it's just, I think it's good to know that people are like other people are in this too, because my street's really lonely. Like I sit here in this space every day and work on records, and I love, some people have children. This is my child. Like this is it for me. Like it doesn't feel like work, and I think but it does get lonely and it does get hard, and even though it doesn't feel like work, it's not always easy.
Sure.
And so I think just kind of talking to people about that and having them go, yeah, like just someone agreeing with you and being like, yeah, it's hard sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And like as somebody that is now full-time as a musician, I'm not on the road 24/7. So a large part of my thing is sitting in the office that I'm in right now, doing admin and taxes or songwriting or ordering merch or doing a stock take, or there's so much else that's involved in being the lead of the band and essentially the manager of the band for the most part. And that can feel really isolating sometimes. And then of course, I do deal with all of the online crap as well. And so sometimes my mental health is the same, like, and I'll say to my guys, like my guys, like, seriously, today's a bad day. I've had this many people be really mean for no reason. I just need to check in and tell you that I'm having a horrible day right now. And it helps. It really does, doesn't it?
I don't understand why people like the online crowd, like why is that a thing? Like what, like genuine question here, what makes someone go, oh, I'm gonna write a shitty comment here, I'm gonna tell this person that I think their music's how, why? I really don't get it.
I don't know any other musicians that would do that to another musician. Well, that's not true. There's been a couple that have commented on our art to be mean, but they're not generally touring musicians, so anybody that's sort of in the game that's actually a touring musician who are trying to make it a career, I've never seen anybody like that comment negatively on someone else's art. They just go, no, it's not for me, and scroll on by. It's always people who clearly already have a chip on their shoulder about something, don't like the content for whatever reason. And you and I both know the exact demographic that 99.9% of people who comment badly on something, we know who that demographic is.
Yeah.
And listeners, you know exactly who it is, so I don't need to mention it. And the other 0.01% is still of that same category, creed-wise, but the other gender. So that's what it is. It's people who are bored, who have a chip on their shoulder, who would never once dare to say that to your face, and they get a tiny weeny little rise in their pants out of it.
It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, it is. It is. But that's, social media, for all the things that social media is wonderful for, it has given anonymity and free license to the people who are probably fairly mean-spirited one way or another in their normal daily lives, the ability to do that with a complete barrier to finding out exactly who they are. These people will have a cartoon dog or something, or a fish, or who knows, something that isn't them in their profile picture even. They've got anonymity, they've got protection, and unless they swear, the people that own the social media aren't going to do anything about it either. So it's just something that you live with. And Katie, it's given me a lot of inspiration for music. So
I love that. I absolutely love it.
They give me endless reams of lyrics and inspiration for Rage. So thanks, really. Thanks. You've made me money and I appreciate it.
I love that so much. Turn it right around. Incredible.
What else?
What do you do to look after your mental health?
What do I do to look after
Yeah.
myself? I mean, similar to you, my community is key. My Patreons have actually been amazing. They are always there. They're the core fan base who actually want to hear about the lows as well as the highs. But my band are amazing. I'm really, I don't know if it's lucky is the right word. We've all had mental breakdowns one way or another. We've all been medicated for one mental health problem or another at some point in our lives, if not are still medicated. And so we all intricately understand what it is to have a panic attack, or to feel like depression is looming and we are going down in a downward spiral. And so we're able to candidly talk about how we feel all of the time. And that is so key, to be able to just honestly say, this is what I'm going through right now. This is how you can help, or there's nothing you can do to help. I just need to be able to talk about it. And we all have that space with each other, and we all feel able to just say, this is happening, you know? And I think that's really key for everybody in the music industry or otherwise, to find the people, as you say, that you can trust, to just be completely candid about what you're going through and how you're feeling at the time.
Yeah, totally. It's such a game changer. Like, pre having that, like, no matter how much I loved my job, the other stuff was bad.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
really bad.
yeah.
Um,
Have you ever worked with people that have been detrimental to your mental health as well? Because I have, and
yeah.
before I had this lineup of my band, I had some very toxic people in my band that exacerbated bad mental health already, and that in itself it's so hard to get out of, isn't it?
I think with mastering, every job is so quick. So, for example, it takes me about a day to master an album.
Amazing.
Yeah, like, it's so good because I get to hear so much new music. It is quick though. And an album can take a while. So I'll do the first draft masters in a day and send them over. And then depending on how many rounds of feedback and revisions and stuff, sometimes it's all approved on the first draft. However, sometimes, because mastering is the last step in the process, there'll be multiple people involved and everyone needed this done yesterday. And tensions can be high, which is understandable. And yeah, like, a lot of people can be quite stressed.
Right.
And then I see it as my job to, like, just be as efficient as possible. And no matter how kind of, people are dumping their stress on me, no matter how much they are, me just kind of like trying to make their experience releasing this record be as good as possible.
Right.
And then afterwards I might go and have a cry, but like in the moment, I just see it as part of my job to kind of, like, yeah, just get on with it, do whatever they're asking. Like,
yeah,
sometimes, like, I do have quite strong work boundaries, but sometimes they've been sacrificed in the name of getting a project over the finish line. But I love my work, and so that's like a personal thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want everyone to be super happy, and I don't want other people stressed. Like, I don't want a band stressing about missing their pressing date, for example.
Sure.
And so if I can make, like, I see it as my job to make that better for them. And then they might be being really shitty on an email in the thick of it, but afterwards they're always like, that was intense, thank you.
You know what? I'm going to say this now. You are a better person than I am, because I think if people were speaking to me in any other way than respectful when they've chosen the time slot for the mastering to get done, and they have chosen when your album is being released, and if you haven't managed that timeline effectively enough to have revisions on your masters and still make your pressing date and all the rest of it, that is your fault, not the mastering engineer. And I feel like if I was you, I'm not very good at putting up with any level of any kind of lack of respect. So all I'm going to say is props to you for being so kind and so generous to make sure that other people are not stressed, even though it's not ultimately your fault. I think that is incredible as a human.
I mean, I can only manage like me. Do you know what I mean? So like, you know, after an intense project, I might have a cry. I might go to therapy and be like, oh my God, this was really intense. I might go to the gym and like just have a deadlift and kind of put a slip knot on and just really go for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I don't know, I think it's such a weird, it's a weird job. It's a really weird job because every single day is different and you're working with different material and, you know, people who like, this is their art, this is their emotion. And a lot of people are like, a lot is riding on this. And this is their child. Like, just like this is my child, this is their child. And so I think you know, I've just got to respect the music and respect that they might have fucked up their deadline, but I still want to make this as nice as possible for them. Disclaimer, I've done so much service industry jobs, like bar work and stuff, that I think that's kind of numbed me to people being like, the amount of people I've had clicking their fingers at me because I'm serving someone else behind a bar. All right, I've not done that for like 10 years or something, but you know, it sticks with you and you're kind of like, yeah, all right, I'll get to you. It was fine. It'll happen.
Again, you know,
same
better person than me, because I did service industry for a couple of decades, including retail management, store management, bar management, all sorts of stuff. And all it did was make me more ragey.
That's absolutely fair.
And I think, you know, you're one or the other. You're either the person like you've become calmer with it and you've been able to just internalize that and go, I'm not going to let you on the face of it ruffle me.
Stress me. Yeah.
Whereas it was much better for me to become a self-employed person because I wanted to physically harm some people. Because I was just like, I'm not here for this. I'm not paid enough for it. And if you say one more word to me, I am going to get sacked for the next thing that I say to you. So it was much better for me to just be like, let's go put this rage into some lyrics.
I mean, I've definitely been there, 100% been there many times. I think though is like, I feel so privileged to do this as a job and that people would trust me with their art.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do the best for them. The disclaimer is though that I will not work with anyone who is problematic.
Fair.
So I think there's a difference between like being under pressure and being a little bit shitty and being problematic. I'm fine with people being like, I need this now, like, you know, go on, got to get it done. And being problematic, like those are two completely different things. And yeah, like if someone's toxic or has been predatory or, you know, racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, yeah, I don't want to work with them. So I think that's a thing. I mean, sometimes you don't know until after you've worked with someone.
Well,
like,
yeah, of course.
You're digging and you can't find anything, and then you've worked with someone and you're like, oh, wish I'd not done that project.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that's my line. Like, I don't really mind it if people are being a bit like pushy or anything, because I know that it's just the work. But if someone's a shit human, I'm just not going to go there.
And I think that's absolutely fair. And actually, that is a lovely moment to, I think, end our chat there, because I feel like that's the one rule for the music industry is don't be a dick, but also never put yourself in a situation where you have to work with somebody that is not safe or not kind. You know, have a level of, this is my line. If you've crossed it, see you later.
100%.
Excellent. Katie, thank you so much for spending so much time with me today. I so appreciate you being so generous with your time when you're so busy.
Thank you for asking me. It's so nice to chat.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. This is the first time that I've actually got to see your face and properly chat.
I know.
So exciting to do.
And I've been following your music for actual 10 years.
That makes me so happy because I have so much respect for all of the work that you've done. And I was so excited to work with you. And I will absolutely be calling upon you for album 3 as and when we manage to write a few more bands. We're in the process, just by the way. So yeah, I'll get on to Carla when I have anything solidly ready.
Shall I start writing some rage bait comments onto your social media?
I need the inspo. Get some rage bait comments for me. Yes.
Yeah, I'll pose as a short bald man. Who said that?
Katie, thank you so much. I hope to speak to you soon. All right.